I've always wondered why Jews and Muslims don't get along, and I've always explained it to my friends that they're half brothers, and it goes back to Abraham and how Abraham was promised a child through Sarah. Sarah wasn't getting pregnant, so Abraham went into his servant Hagar, the Egyptian girl, and they had a child, Ishmael, who they went on to be called the Ishmaelites and the Muslim faith later on. And then finally, Sarah did get pregnant, and she gave birth to Isaac, and Isaac was his descendants went on to become the Jews. So you had the Jews and the Muslims through Abraham. That's why you had this peace accord with Donald Trump called the Abrahamic Accord, because they have that tied together. But what I really should have been asking is, why do the Muslims hate the Jews? So I saw an interview with Dr. David Wood. He interviewed a guy named Rachid, and Rachid's an ex-Muslim, and he was raised to hate Jews. So what he's going to do, and I'm going to show some video clips here, and then I'm going to put a link to the entire interview in the description if you want to see the entire interview. But he talks about the myth of why there's such widespread hatred of Jews, and that has to do with what's going on in Israel. And then he's going to talk about the reality of why people grow up in that faith to hate the Jews. So here's the first clip regarding the myth.
Because of Israel occupying the land, that's why we are doing that. But that's not the truth. Actually, there were massacres against Jews even before that. And I can mention few, for example. In Morocco, we had the massacre of Fez. Fez is a famous city in Morocco. That's 1033. It's, 900 years before Israel. Moroccans killed 6,000 Jews in one day. I can give you another one in Iraq, 1941. It's called the Farhud massacre. They killed between 200 to 1,000. We don't have the exact numbers. And the name of it tells everything. It's Farhud. In Arabic, Far means he ran away. Hud is Yehud, the Jews. The Jews ran away on that day. So they still have it in Iraq. They call it the Farhud Day. So the day when the Jews left. It's 1941. Israel didn't exist back in those days. We have one, and also the Hebron massacre. It happened before the foundation of Israel. We had 67 Jews that were killed. All these things just shows you that Jews, they were hated, and we have it in the text. If we can really dig into Muslim texts and show you exactly what we thought of them.
So obviously, by that testimony, you can see that the hatred of the Jews was going on long before 1948 and the recreation of Israel. There's pogroms against the Jews. It's hard to even call it a pogrom. That's just flat out slaughter. So he explained that it's not the territory that is the problem. And he goes on here to explain how it's institutional. It's institutional anti-Semitism that starts by brainwashing children. It's a little disturbing, but that's what happens, and here he is discussing it.
Well, because when you're raised and brainwashed from childhood that those are the enemies of Muslims, what do you think I will think when I grow up? I had to work and struggle with it to overcome that hatred for years. It wasn't easy. Probably for you grow up in a different background, so you didn't feel it. I felt it so strong. You can't even shake a hand of a Jew, because all the ideas that they taught us, that he is unclean, he is cursed, he is hated by God, they are the enemies of our prophet, they tried to kill him, they tried to bewitch him. All this history, it's embedded in our DNA. So when you think of a Jew, what image is going to come to your mind if you were raised since childhood to think they are the monsters, they are the killers, they are the bloodsuckers? So what are you going to think about them when you see a Jew?
That's disturbing, how a culture can raise their children to want to murder another religion. And that's how Brother Rachid, that's how he grew up. thank God he came out of that, and it took him a while to squeeze that sponge of hate out of his system, but he did. But he says this institutional anti-Semitism goes further back all the way to the time of Muhammad, when he's talking about when Muhammad was in Mecca, how he was talking about nature and God, and you could see God through nature, and there's one God, and we can all worship that one God, and that he was telling everybody that he's a prophet. And so he went up to Medina to meet the Jews up there so he could be accepted as a prophet, and they said no. And that's where the hatred started. Once he got rejected, it became a threat. It became a threat to his power. So that's when he started to slaughter the Jews.
What happened when you read the surahs, for example, in Mecca, he was talking about nature, and look at mountains, look at the sky, look at all these natural stuff, and it shows there is a God and only one God. And hey, Christians approve that, Jews approve that, and I am talking about Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. See, we're all a family. Mm-hmm. We're against the polytheists. And when he moved to Medina, he was like, right? They were like, no, we are not with you. Yeah. We have a different narrative. And when he knew he was rejected by Jews and Christians, he started attacking them one by one. And he started making excuses to justify kicking out Jews, killing them, enslaving their women and their kids. For every tribe, he found an excuse. Mm-hmm. And when you read it, you see clearly he had a plan to get rid of them because they were a threat to his.
I didn't mean to steal so much of his thunder, honestly. I was just trying to set the video up. And so Brother Rachid goes on to talk about the Khaybar massacre, which there's some details he left out. So let's just let Brother Rachid recount the story of the early massacres against Jews.
Exactly. They're heading out to the fields to do their work.
And suddenly they saw his army, and he was like, Allahu Akbar kharibat Khaybar, like God, Allah is great, now we will destroy Khaybar. And since then, even now in these protests around the world, people are shouting, Khaybar, Khaybar, ya Yahud, Jaysh Muhammad, Sawfa Ya'ud, means Khaybar, Khaybar, oh Jews, the army of Muhammad is coming back. So they are reminding the whole world that Muhammad massacred Jews on the day of Khaybar. He took their land, he took their belongings, and he made them they were like working for him as slaves, actually.
Yeah. He made them dhimmis,
So you saw some of the early history of the Jew hatred, and over the generation, if you want an idea of how this progressed, well, I mean, I've always wondered what Muslims pray about. I know in my scripture, which is the Jewish scripture, I'm not Jewish, but I read the Hebrew scriptures. One of the last books in the Old Testament talks about how the Lord doesn't care for these repetitive prayers. He wants your heart. He doesn't want you to just say things over and over and over again. But in Islam, I learned through Brother Rachid that it's a repetitive type of prayer. Same in Catholicism, repetitive. And so one of the things that they repeat is pretty damaging towards Jews and Christians, the people of the book. So I will let Brother Rachid explain it to you.
So going back to my point that this is related to religion, I grew up as a Muslim, and the first thing we learn is the Fatiha, the opening, how to pray with it. And everybody around me, not just me, we knew that the last verses of the Fatiha are about Jews and Christians. If you read them, the path of those those you have blessed, means they're talking to Allah, not those who you are displeased with or who are astray. مغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. It means Jews and Christians. Actually, it says the ones that you cursed, or you are angry at them, you are mad at them, and those who went astray. The ones who went astray are Christians. The ones who are cursed are the Jews. Imagine you repeat that 18 times a day, And you are just repeating that in every prayer, every time, and in your mind it's related to Jews and Christians, then you have a problem there, because that's brainwashing, actually. A child is raised to remember that the ones who are cursed are Jews, the ones who went astray are Christians, and are repeated daily, 5 times a day, and you repeat it in every unit in the prayer, not just one of them. So imagine a kid growing up like this. What is he going to think about Jews and Christians when he grows up?
Well, he ends that clip by talking about, what do you think how these kids are going to grow up if this is what they're learning and this is what they're repeating. And he gives an example of the type of hatred they're teaching children as early as kindergarten.
When you read the history of Islam, who put poison for Muhammad? They used to ask us at school, at the mosque, who poisoned the Prophet? Yahud la'anahumullah. So a kid in kindergarten, he's saying Yahud la'anahumullah. Jews, maybe Allah curse them. And who bewitched your prophet? Al-Yahud la'anahumullah. So kids are just programmed.
So when you
It's pretty sad. It's really sad. I mean, honestly, I've said for a long time that the children are the victims, really, of their parents brainwashing them to teaching them how to murder. And if you want this next generation of people to hate another religion so much that you want them to kill them, you have to demonize those people. And that's what they've been doing to Jews by calling them, pigs and rats and apes and all these things. And I'm sure you all know about that. Here I am stealing Brother Rachid's thunder again. But this is what they do. And it's not just that culture. You see it in Africa. If you want them to, your tribe to kill another tribe, you just describe the other tribe as cockroaches. They did that between the Hutus and the Tutsis. They're cockroaches. So let's let Brother Rachid talk about how he was taught about what Jews are really descendants of. It's reprehensible.
We used to call Jews, they still do it until now, sons of pigs and apes. And it's an insult. Until now, they call them like that. And I'm sure in these protests, they call them the same thing, sons of apes and pigs, because they believe that a tribe of Jews, they broke the Sabbath. So because they broke the Sabbath, Allah turned them to apes and to pigs.
Yeah, and that one's interesting, because for a while, Muhammad had declared that Allah had transformed the Jews into some animals, but he wasn't sure which ones yet. He eventually decided it was apes and pigs. But before that, it's interesting because he wasn't sure, so he was nervous around certain animals. Let me give two.
One of them is the rat, or like
And for that one, he actually gave a scientific experiment. So
how to prove they are Jewish.
Yeah. So this one narrated Abu Huraira. The prophet said, "A group of Israelites were lost. Nobody knows what they did, but I do not see them except that they were cursed and transformed into mouses or rats. For if you put the milk of a she-camel in front of a mouse or a rat, it will not drink it. But if the milk of a sheep is put in front of it, it will drink it." So he's actually recommending a kind of scientific experiment. Hey guys, I can prove that these rats are Jews. They're following Jewish dietary laws. They're still kosher.
Even as rats, they're still very religious.
Yeah, they won't see, because they weren't allowed to drink camel milk.
Yeah.
He says, then the rat won't drink camel milk, but it'll drink sheep's milk like the Jews are allowed to do. And therefore, these rats there are Jews. And then there was another time where someone offered him lizard, and it's like, I don't know, that could be a Jew. I don't want to accidentally eat a Jew when he got transformed into a lizard.
Every bad or every creature that Muhammad was afraid of or he didn't like, he linked it to Jews. And this is anti-Semitism clear, and I mean, you can't define it better than this. And the problem, many Muslims still until today, they believe in it, and when they see this conflict over a land. They justify everything that they have in Islam. Look at the Jews, what they are doing. So we are right to think of them like this. And we start justifying every hatred, every belief that makes them, they are not human. And the killing starts when you make people, when you remove humanity from,
Dehumanize them.
Dehumanize them. So that's when you start thinking their blood is okay to spill. It's okay to kill them because they are not human beings, actually.
Well, honestly, I learned a lot watching that interview, and I've always wondered, the root of the hatred, and it kind of was an eye-opener for me. And this is coming from a guy who's been studying this stuff for 30 years. So I'm still trying to get past the science of the rat and the milk. Trust science, they say. I think I'll trust Jesus. Thank you very much. And speaking of Jesus, yeah, we can use more love. We can use more love. And I know a lot of Muslims who became born-again Christians, and they learned to love, and they set aside that hate, and they worship God side by side with Jews and Gentiles. So that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. So I hope you enjoyed these clips. I hope it was informative and educational, and no disrespect to any religion. I just want to see what makes people tick. And I think we saw that today. Thanks for watching. Shalom.